Two faces, one soul, a kingdom hanging in the balance. The stone walls whispered secrets in the dead of night. On one side, darkness, cold, desperate, forgotten. On the other, golden light, power, legacy, responsibility. Between them, a bowl of bread that would change everything. King Aldrich had ruled the Shadow Moon Pack for 7 brutal years, his crown heavy with the weight of tradition and the burden of unchallenged power. But tonight, that crown sat discarded in his private chambers while he walked the streets as something far less than royalty. Tonight, he was nothing. A beggar, a ghost, a test. The two wolves. Every alpha has 2 wolves inside them, his father had said on his deathbed. One that rules with strength and one that leads with wisdom. The question is, which one are you feeding? King Aldrich stared at his reflection in the polished silver mirror of his private chambers. His blue eyes, the mark of the royal bloodline, glowed with an inner fire that spoke of generations of alphas. His face, weathered but strong, bore the scars of battles fought and won. The crown upon his head, ornate with rubies and gold, caught the firelight and threw dancing shadows across the stone walls. Behind him, his wolf spirit manifested in the shadows, a massive creature with eyes like frozen stars, guardian and curse in equal measure. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. For weeks, Aldrich had felt the disconnect between the throne and the truth. Reports came to him filtered through layers of hierarchy. Beta commanders, pack officials, advisors who smiled while his people suffered. He heard whispers in the corridors, saw fear in the eyes of Omegas who scurried past, noticed the way certain pack members grew fat while others grew thin. "My king," Beta Garrett entered, his scarred face grave. "I must advise against this plan. If you're discovered, then my pack will know their king is a coward who can't face his own failures," Aldrich interrupted, removing his crown. The weight lifted, but a heavier burden settled on his soul. "How long has it been since I walked among them, Garrett?" "Really walked as they do, seeing what they see." 7 years, my lord." 7 years. Aldrich's jaw clenched. 7 years of sitting on that throne while rot festered beneath my very nose. The Omega girl who cleaned my chambers yesterday, did you see her hands? Garrett nodded grimly. Worked to the bone. Literally. And when I asked my advisors about Omega welfare, what did they tell me? That all Omegas are well cared for, properly fed, and grateful for pack protection. Aldrich moved to the window, staring out at the sprawling territory below. Lights flickered in the distance, some bright and warm in the noble quarter, others dim and struggling in the outer rings where the powerless lived. Lies, he whispered. All lies. And I sat on my throne and believed them because it was easier than confronting the truth. He turned back to Garrett, and his beta saw something in those royal blue eyes that made him step back. Determination bordering on madness. Tonight the king dies. Tonight a beggar is born, and tomorrow we'll see what kind of pack I've really built. The cold stones. The transformation was complete. Where King Aldrich had stood, now slumped a broken beggar, ragged cloak reeking of river water and despair, face hidden beneath a tattered hood, body hunched with the weight of starvation and defeat. He had suppressed his alpha aura so completely that even he could barely feel the wolf inside. The technique was ancient, forbidden, dangerous. To suppress one's wolf was to court madness, to risk losing oneself entirely. But Aldrich needed this. He needed to feel what it was like to be powerless in his own kingdom. The stone wall was cold against his back as he collapsed in the merchant quarter, a busy thoroughfare where pack members of all ranks passed daily. It was here, 3 weeks ago, that an Omega had been found dead, frozen in the night while dozens walked past. The official report called it natural causes. The whispered truth called it murder by indifference. "Help!" Aldrich rasped, letting his voice crack with weakness. "Please!" A merchant approached, well-fed, draped in fine furs. His eyes flicked to the beggar, assessed, dismissed. He stepped over Aldrich's outstretched hand and continued on. Then came a mother with 2 children. The little one stopped, curious, but she yanked them away. "Don't look at rogues, darlings. They're dangerous, probably diseased." Warriors next, in pack colors, laughing about a recent hunt. One of them kicked a stone that skittered near Aldrich's leg. "Pathetic," he heard one mutter. "Should put them down like the rabid dogs they are." Hour after hour they passed. The blacksmith, the healer, the teachers, the hunters, all well-fed, all warm, all blind. Aldrich's heart, which had started this test with hope, began to freeze like the stones beneath him. This wasn't his pack. This couldn't be what he'd built. But the evidence was undeniable, crushing, devastating. Behind his closed eyelids, in the spirit realm where wolves dreamed, he felt his wolf, the great blue-eyed guardian, howling in anguish. What have we become? Then, as the moon reached its zenith, and Aldrich's test turned from desperate hope to grim certainty, a new scent drifted on the air. Honey and wildflowers, and underneath, the sharp gnawing scent of starvation. The Omega's heart. Lyra had learned long ago to make herself invisible. As an Omega in the Shadow Moon Pack, invisibility was survival. Don't draw attention. Don't make eye contact. Don't question. Don't hope. Just exist in the margins, doing the work that kept the pack running while receiving scraps in return. She was 19 and looked 40. Malnutrition had stolen the fullness from her face, leaving sharp cheekbones and hollow eyes. Her clothes were patched so many times they were more patches than original fabric. Her wolf, the spirit every pack member should have felt burning inside, had gone silent years ago, crushed under the weight of systematic cruelty. Tonight, she'd worked a double shift in the pack kitchens, preparing feast after feast for the nobles while her own stomach cramped with hunger. Her reward was a small bundle she'd managed to hide, bread, cheese, a sliver of dried meat. Not stolen, but saved from what would have been thrown to the dogs. It was her only meal. It had to last 2 days. She was taking the long way home through the merchant quarter, avoiding the main streets where higher-ranking pack members might notice her, might demand she run an errand or perform some task. Head down, shoulders curved, invisible. Then she saw him. The beggar was collapsed against the stone wall, hand outstretched, clearly dying. The scent of sickness, or what she thought was sickness, rolled off him. Everyone was walking past. Everyone. "Not my problem," her survival instinct whispered. "You can't afford to care." But there was another voice, quieter, nearly dead, but not quite. "Someone has to remember what we're supposed to be." Her mother's voice. Her mother who died 3 years ago from natural causes that looked a lot like being worked to death. Her mother who'd told stories of the old pack, where alphas protected the vulnerable and omegas were valued, not exploited. Pack means no one gets left behind, little wolf. That's what makes us different from lone predators. That's what makes us strong. Lyra's hands trembled as she approached the beggar. Fear spiked through her. What if this was a test? What if helping a rogue would be punished? But what if she walked away and became everything she hated about this place? Are you hurt?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. The beggar's eyes cracked open, and for just a heartbeat, Lyra saw something in them that made her breath catch. A flash of blue, deep and knowing, before they dulled again to ordinary brown. He groaned, the sound of real pain. Lyra knelt beside him, her own body protesting the movement. This close, she could see he was older. His face hidden beneath a hood and wild beard. A rogue, definitely. Dangerous, possibly. In need, certainly. "I don't have much," she whispered, and pressed her food bundle into his hand. The warmth from her body still clung to the cloth. "But please take this." His fingers closed around it with surprising strength. Then his eyes opened fully, and he looked at her, really looked, in a way no one had looked at her in years, like she was a person, like she mattered. "You're hungry," he rasped. "I can smell it." Lyra flinched. Even dying, a wolf could scent another's pain. "I'll manage." "Why?" The question was hard, almost accusing. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous. Your pack." He gestured vaguely. "They all know better than to help rogues." Something fierce flashed through Lyra, burning away her carefully maintained invisibility for just a moment. "My pack," she said, bitterness sharp as broken glass, "is very good at looking away from things they don't want to see." "Then why don't you?" The question hung in the cold air. Why didn't she? Why did she still feed the stray pups that wandered the Omega Quarter? Why did she sit with the elderly Omegas when they were dying, holding their hands when no one else would? Why did she cling to her mother's stories when every day proved them to be lies? "Because someone has to remember what we're supposed to be," Lyra finally said, her voice breaking. "We're wolves, pack, and pack means no one gets left behind." She laughed, a bitter sound. "At least that's what it should mean." Act 2. The Revelation. The King's Return. 3 days later, Lyra was summoned to the Great Hall. Summons for Omegas never meant anything good. Heart-hammering, she climbed the stone steps, the main entrance, forbidden to her rank. Fear turned her blood to ice. Inside, the hall blazed with torchlight. Every pack member seemed to be present, whispering urgently. At the front, on the raised platform where the Alpha's throne commanded the room, stood King Aldrich. But this was a king transformed. Gone was the distant, untouchable figure she'd glimpsed only in passing. This Alpha was radiating barely contained fury, his blue eyes blazing with wolf fire, his presence filling the hall like a storm about to break. Behind him, in the spirit realm, visible to those with wolf sight, his guardian wolf stood, massive, magnificent, terrifying, blue eyes glowing with judgment. 3 nights ago, his voice cracked through the hall like a whip, "I walked among you." Silence. Absolute. Crushing. Not as your king, but as one of the broken, one of the forgotten. I wanted to see what kind of pack I had built, what kind of wolves I had created. Lyra's legs went weak. No, it couldn't be. "Do you know how many of you helped a dying rogue?" Aldrich continued, each word falling like a hammer. "How many of you showed the basic decency that pack law demands, the basic compassion that separates us from the mindless beasts we sometimes become?" The silence was damning. "One," the word echoed. "One Omega who had nothing, who was starving herself, gave me her only meal." Around Lyra, pack members began turning, searching. She tried to shrink, to become invisible again, but it was too late. Eyes found her. Hundreds of eyes, judging, assessing, some filled with shame, others with anger that she'd exposed them. Then the king's eyes found hers. The moment their gazes locked, the world tilted. In the spirit realm, something massive shifted. His blue-eyed wolf and her long, dormant, golden-eyed wolf suddenly saw each other, recognized each other. "No," Lyra thought desperately, "impossible." "Lyra Ashwood," King Aldrich said, his voice softening in a way that made the entire hall hold its breath. "Come forward." This was punishment. It had to be. Punishment for touching royalty, for not recognizing him, for some rule she didn't know existed. Lyra's legs trembled as she walked through the crowd that parted before her like water, each step feeling like walking to her execution. She reached the platform and immediately dropped to her knees. Eyes down, exposing her neck in ultimate submission. "My king, I—" "Stand." The command was gentle but absolute. Lyra stood on shaking legs, still unable to meet his eyes. King Aldrich descended from his throne. Each step closer amplified the weight of his alpha presence, not suppressed now, not hidden. It should have driven her to her knees, should have made her wolf cower. Instead, that long, dormant part of her soul began to wake, to sing, to reach. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes, could smell cedar and smoke and something wild that called to her in ways she didn't understand. "You saved your king's life," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "And in doing so, you saved this pack from itself. The rot ends tonight. The old order ends tonight." His hand rose, and Lyra felt his fingers, gentle, impossibly gentle, beneath her chin, tilting her face up until she had no choice but to meet his gaze. "You showed me what pack is supposed to mean, what an alpha is supposed to protect." "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will." His thumb brushed her cheek, and the tenderness in that small gesture made her eyes burn with tears she'd forgotten how to cry. "Did you feel it, Lyra, when I touched you before?" She had. God help her, she had. A spark, a connection, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "The bond doesn't lie," Aldrich continued, and now everyone in the hall could hear the vulnerability in his voice. "And it doesn't care about rank or station. I've searched for years, never imagining my mate would be hidden in plain sight, starving in my own territory while I sat blind in my palace." Mate. The word ricocheted through Lyra's mind. Impossible. Omegas didn't have alpha mates, certainly not king mates. This was a dream, a delusion, But her wolf knew, was crying with joy, with recognition, with 7 years of silence finally broken. In the spirit realm, the golden wolf and blue wolf circled each other, cautious, yearning, meant to be. "I'm giving you a choice," Aldrich said, addressing her but also the entire hall. "Stand beside me and help me rebuild what I've let fall apart. Be my queen, my Luna, my equal, or walk away and I'll make sure you want for nothing. But I won't force this bond on you." Lyra's mind reeled. Yesterday she was invisible, worthless. Today she was being offered a crown, a mate, a voice. It was too much, too fast, too crash. The sound of breaking glass shattered the moment. Screams erupted from the back of the hall. Then smoke, thick, acrid, wrong, began billowing through the doors. "The usurper's crown!" Aldrich spun instantly, moving to shield Lyra with his body. "Garrett!" he roared. But Beta Garrett was already down, a silver dart protruding from his neck. Guards dropped systematically, one after another. Wolves began shifting in panic, but something was wrong. They couldn't complete the transformation. The smoke was burning their lungs, paralyzing their wolves. Wolf's bane. "No," Aldrich snarled, but he could already feel it working on him, weakening his alpha strength, burning through his veins like liquid silver. Through the chaos, through the smoke. Lyra saw them, figures moving with military precision, wearing masks that gleamed like silver in the torchlight. A coordinated attack, a coup. Aldrich stumbled, trying to maintain his protective stance over Lyra, even as the poison dragged him down. His eyes met hers one more time, blazing with desperate command. "Run! Whatever happens, run! Don't let them—" He collapsed. Lyra caught him, or tried to, but they both went down hard. The smoke was burning her lungs, making her vision swim. Around them, wolves were falling like dominoes, so carefully planned, so perfectly executed. Strong hands grabbed her arms, hauling her away from Aldrich's unconscious form. She fought, screaming, but she'd been weak before the smoke. Now she had nothing left. Through the haze, she saw someone approach the fallen king. A woman. Elegant even in this chaos. beautiful in the way predators are beautiful, all sharp edges and cold calculation. She wore furs trimmed with gold, and on her head sat a crown, not the king's crown currently rolling across the stone floor. A different crown, one that shouldn't exist. "Poor Aldrich," the woman cooed, her voice carrying over the chaos with practiced ease. "You always were too soft, too sentimental. Did you really think you could change centuries of tradition with a peasant Omega's table scraps?" She circled his unconscious form like a wolf circling prey. Behind her, the smoke began to clear, revealing the scope of the disaster. Dozens of pack members down, guards incapacitated, the hall under complete control of the masked attackers. "But don't worry, dear cousin," the woman continued. "I'll take good care of your throne." The pack needs strong leadership, traditional leadership, not this. She gestured dismissively at Aldrich. Weakness disguised as compassion. Her eyes found Lyra's across the hall, glittering with malice. "As for your little Omega mate," she smiled, cold and cruel, "she'll make an excellent lesson about the price of stepping above one's station. The Omega quarters need to remember their place. What better teaching tool than a failed Luna?" Lyra's vision was going dark at the edges. The hands holding her were pulling her toward the back of the hall, toward darkness, toward whatever fate awaited Omegas who dared to dream. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Aldrich's hand reaching across the stone floor toward her, his lips forming words she couldn't hear. "I'm sorry. I'll find you. I promise." Then nothing. Act 3. The Revolution. Chains of Gold. Lyra woke to the weight of iron. A collar encircled her neck. Not just any iron, but wolfsbane laced, burning against her skin, keeping her wolf suppressed and silent. She was in a cell, stone walls on all sides, a small barred window showing dawn light. The palace dungeons. Memory crashed back. The attack. The smoke. Aldrich falling. The woman with the crown. Lyra surged to her feet, immediately regretting it as the collar burned hotter, sending waves of weakness through her body. "Easy," a voice whispered from the next cell. "The more you fight it, the worse it gets." Lyra turned to see an elderly woman, another Omega, by her scent, huddled in the corner of the adjacent cell. Bruises covered her arms, and her eyes held the hollow look of someone who'd seen too much. "What happened?" Lyra croaked. "The king—" "Alive!" the woman interrupted quickly, then glanced toward the corridor as if afraid of being overheard. "Imprisoned in the high tower. Lady Morgana keeps him alive for leverage and entertainment." Morgana. The king's cousin, his father's brother's daughter. She was supposed to be Luna 7 years ago, before Aldrich's wolf rejected the match, said the bond wasn't there. She's hated him, and any Omega who dared exist in his sight, ever since. The pieces clicked together. A coup born from rejected pride and jealousy. 7 years in the making. "How long have I been unconscious?" 3 days. Morgana's already declared herself queen. She's reinstating the old ways, which means Omegas are being redistributed as servants to higher-ranking wolves. Breeding stock for alphas without mates. No rights, no voices, no hope. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. "The pack just accepted this?" The old woman laughed bitterly. "The pack watched you give food to a beggar and did nothing. You think they'll fight for Omega rights now? Most of them are celebrating. The warriors get more power, the nobles get more wealth, everyone gets to feel superior to someone. That's all most wolves want." "Not all," Lyra whispered, remembering the food bundle, the choice to help, the belief that pack meant something more. "No," the old woman agreed, studying Lyra with new interest. "Not all. Word spreading in the Omega quarters. About you. About what happened in the Great Hall. About a king who would choose an Omega mate. That doesn't matter now. He's imprisoned and I'm—" "You're the Luna," the woman interrupted fiercely. The bond was declared before the entire pack. Morgana can put on 100 crowns, but she can't break a mate bond. And she knows it. Why else keep you alive? Before Lyra could respond, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. 3 guards appeared, all high-ranking betas who'd served under Aldrich, but now wore Morgana's colors. One unlocked Lyra's cell, while the others kept weapons trained on her. "Queen Morgana requests your presence," the lead guard said, his tone making clear it wasn't a request. They dragged her through the palace, her palace now, technically, though she'd never set foot in it before. Past halls she'd only cleaned as a servant, past chambers where decisions about her life had been made without her knowledge or consent. To the throne room. Morgana sat on Aldrich's throne, wearing a crown of black gold studded with blood-red rubies. She was beautiful in the classical sense, tall, elegant, her wolf strong and visible in the amber of her eyes. Everything Lyra wasn't. "The little Omega awakens," Morgana purred. "How are you finding your accommodations? Not quite what you expected when you accepted the king's proposal, I imagine?" Lyra said nothing, keeping her eyes down. Invisibility as survival, the old lessons kicking in. "Look at me," Morgana commanded, alpha compulsion in her voice. The collar burned, but Lyra raised her eyes, met Morgana's gaze with more defiance than she'd intended to show. Morgana smiled. "There's some fire in you after all. Good. Breaking you will be more satisfying." She stood, descending from the throne to circle Lyra like a predator. "Do you know what you are? You're an anomaly, a mistake. Omegas don't have alpha mates. The moon herself wouldn't be so cruel as to chain a king to weakness." "Then why keep me alive?" Lyra asked, the words out before she could stop them. Morgana's hand shot out, gripping Lyra's chin with bruising force. "Because killing you would make you a martyr. The Omega quarters are already whispering your name like a prayer. No, better to let them see you broken, obedient, accepting your proper place. Better to let them watch as you publicly reject the mate bond and acknowledge me as the rightful queen. I'll never—" The slap sent Lyra sprawling. The collar flared with burning pain. "You will," Morgana said calmly, "or I'll have Aldrich dragged here and tortured in front of you. Every bone broken, every nerve lit aflame. Would you like to hear your mate scream, little Omega? Would you like to feel his agony through your bond?" Lyra's breath caught. She could feel him, distantly. A thread of gold in the darkness, weakened, but not broken. Their bond, barely formed, but already precious. Could she sacrifice it to save him pain? Could she sacrifice him to maintain it? "I'll give you 3 days to decide," Morgana said, returning to her stolen throne. 3 days to choose, publicly reject the bond and live as my servant, or refuse and watch him die slowly. Either way, I win. Either way, the Omega uprising dies before it begins. The wolf awakens. That night, in her cell, Lyra felt something she hadn't felt in years. Her wolf was stirring. It should have been impossible. The collar was specifically designed to suppress wolf spirits, to keep Omegas manageable. But somehow, deep in her soul, the golden-eyed wolf was fighting through the suppression. No, Lyra realized. Not fighting through it. Fighting because of something else. Someone else. Through the bond, that thin thread of gold, she felt him. Aldrich. He was reaching for her across the distance, feeding strength through their connection. His wolf calling to hers, refusing to let her spirit die even as his own body was poisoned and chained. "I'm here," his voice whispered through the bond. Not words exactly, but meaning, feeling, presence. "I'm here, and I'm not leaving you." "You should?" Lyra thought back, not sure if he could hear her. "Save yourself. I'm not worth—" The response came like a thunderclap. "Never say that again." Then, gentler. You are my mate, my Luna, my equal. You are worth everything. Tears burned down Lyra's cheeks. How? She whispered aloud. How can you say that? You barely know me. I'm nobody. Nothing. But even as she said it, memories flickered through the bond. His memories. Of walking past pack members who wouldn't meet his eyes, who saw a crown instead of a person. Of sitting on a throne and feeling the weight of isolation. Of searching for years for someone who would see him, really see him. Not as a king, but as a wolf who was lonely and lost and trying so hard to be worthy of his power. You saw me, his voice came through. When I was nothing, when I was dying, when I was the lowest I'd ever been, you saw me and chose compassion. That's not nothing, Lyra. That's everything. In the adjacent cell, the old woman was watching. You're bonding, she whispered. Even through the collars. Moon above, the legends are true. What legends? True mate bonds can't be broken by anything in this world or the next. The collar can suppress your wolf, but it can't suppress your soul. The woman pressed her face to the bars. Listen to me carefully, child. There are others. Omegas, yes, but also lower-ranking wolves who remember the old ways, the real old ways before hierarchy became tyranny. We've been waiting for a sign, for someone to rally behind. I can't. You already are. Right now, in every Omega cell in this palace, in every servant quarter, in every forgotten corner of this pack, wolves are choosing. Some are bowing to Morgana because it's easier, safer, but others are remembering what that beggar king showed them, that compassion is strength, that power should protect, not dominate. Lyra's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying you have 3 days before Morgana's deadline. 3 days before you have to choose. But you're not the only one choosing, Lyra Ashwood. We all are. And some of us are choosing revolution. The king in chains. High in the palace tower, King Aldrich hung in silver chains. The wolfsbane poisoning had weakened him severely, but Morgana kept him just alive enough to suffer. Just conscious enough to feel his pack, his kingdom, slipping away from him. But he also felt something else. Lyra. Their bond was growing stronger, not weaker. Despite the distance, despite the collars and chains and poison, their souls were intertwining. Her strength feeding his determination feeding hers. It was unprecedented. Even Garrett, imprisoned in an adjacent tower, had never seen anything like it. True mates, Garrett whispered through the wall between them. Not just compatible mates, my king. True mates. The kind the old stories spoke of. Bonds that could reshape the pack itself. Aldrich closed his eyes, reaching through the bond. He could feel Lyra's fear, her doubt, but underneath, steel. The same steel that had driven her to help a dying beggar when everyone else walked past. Don't give up, he sent through the bond. I'm coming for you. How? Her response was faint, but clear. You're chained, poisoned. I'm an alpha who finally understands what he's fighting for. A pause, then. Tell me about the others. The old woman mentioned others. Through the bond, images flickered, Omegas whispering in cells, servants passing messages, a network forming in the shadows, invisible to those who'd learned to never look at the powerless. Aldrich smiled grimly. Morgana had made the same mistake he once did. She'd forgotten that invisible didn't mean powerless. Garrett, he called softly, how many guards remain loyal? Hard to say. Many switched sides when Morgana showed strength, but some... Garrett paused. Some were there that night. Some heard you declare an Omega as your mate and saw something they'd never seen before. A king willing to break every tradition for truth. Get word to them, however you can. Tell them, 3 nights from now, when the moon is dark, the invisible ones rise. My king, you're in no condition to... I'm in exactly the condition I need to be in, Aldrich interrupted. Morgana wants me broken, helpless, a cautionary tale about what happens when alphas go soft. But she's forgotten something crucial. What's that? A true alpha isn't strong because he dominates. He's strong because he knows when to lift others up. And right now, the strongest wolves in this pack aren't the ones wearing crowns. They're the ones who've survived despite having everything taken from them. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's response, a surge of fierce determination that made his heart swell. "Tell the others," he sent to her. "Tell them their king is coming, and he's bringing a revolution. The Invisible Army." 2 weeks under Morgana's reign, and the pack was fracturing. On the surface, everything appeared normal. The nobles feasted, the warriors patrolled, the hierarchy held. But in the margins, in the forgotten spaces, something was building. Lyra had become something she never imagined. A leader. It started small. Messages passed through food deliveries, whispers during servant rotations, hand signals developed over years of silent communication suddenly taking on new meaning. The Omega network, invisible to those in power, became a resistance. "How many?" Lyra asked the old woman, whose name she'd learned was Elena. 40 Omega servants with access to the palace, 20 lower-ranking wolves who remember the old king's kindness, a dozen guards who still believe in the oath they swore to protect the pack, not the throne. Elena's eyes gleamed, and every single one of them ready to move when you give the word. "I'm not a leader," Lyra protested. "I don't know how to—" "You gave your only meal to a dying beggar," Elena interrupted. "You looked at a king and saw a person. You wore a collar designed to break you and instead grew stronger. Don't tell me you're not a leader. You just never had anything worth leading before." That night, through the bond, Aldrich shared his plan. It was risky, potentially suicidal, definitely insane. It was perfect. "Morgana's coronation ceremony," Lyra whispered to the gathered Omegas during a work rotation. 3 days from now, she's planned it as a spectacle, her ultimate triumph over the weak king." "How does that help us?" one Omega asked. "Because she's so confident in her victory that she's ordered me brought before the entire pack. She wants me to publicly reject the mate bond in front of everyone, wants to break Aldrich's spirit and prove that Omega Uprising was just a fantasy." "But you won't," Elena said. "Not a question." "No," Lyra agreed. "I won't. And when I refuse, when she moves to punish me, that's when we strike. Omegas control the kitchens, the serving lines, the food and drink. We've spent 2 weeks slowly replacing the wolfsbane stores with harmless herbs. When the ceremony begins, Morgana and her supporters will drink poisoned wine, thinking it's blessed. And we, all of us, will be free to shift for the first time in weeks." "And the king?" Lyra smiled, fierce and feral. "The guards who still believe have been slowly weakening his chains. On my signal, he breaks free. And then—" She paused, feeling through the bond the answering surge of determination from Aldrich. "Then we show Morgana what happens when you underestimate the invisible. The Omega Queen." The coronation ceremony was everything Morgana had dreamed. The great hall blazed with 1,000 candles. Every pack member was present, dressed in their finest. The throne had been polished until it gleamed, and on it sat Morgana, resplendent in her black gold crown, accepting the adoration of those who'd chosen power over principle. Lyra was dragged before the throne in chains, her collar burning, her Omega status on full display for all to see. But when she raised her eyes, no longer submissive, no longer invisible, Morgana felt the first flicker of unease. "Lyra Ashwood," Morgana announced, her voice carrying through the hall. "You stand accused of attempting to rise above your station, of accepting a mate bond that violates the natural order. Before this pack, before the moon herself, you will renounce this false bond and accept your proper place as Omega servant." Silence fell. 1,000 eyes watched, waiting. Lyra felt Aldrich through the bond, ready, waiting, trusting her. She felt Elena and the other Omegas positioned throughout the hall. She felt the loyal guards, hands on weapons, prepared to move. "I have something to say," Lyra said clearly. Morgana smiled, thinking she'd won. "Speak your renunciation." "I renounce nothing." Lyra's voice grew stronger with each word. "I am Lyra Ashwood, Omega, servant, forgotten, and I am the chosen mate of your true king. The bond was declared before this pack, blessed by the moon and sealed in both our souls. You can chain my body, Morgana. You can collar my wolf, but you cannot break what the moon herself has joined." Morgana's face twisted with rage. "You dare—" "I dare everything," Lyra interrupted, and now her voice rang like a bell. "Because I finally understand what my king tried to show this pack. We are not our ranks. We are not our hierarchy. We are pack, all of us, and pack means no one gets left behind." "Enough!" Morgana surged from the throne. "Guards, take her to—" But the guards weren't moving. Morgana spun, confusion turning to horror as she saw her warriors swaying, their faces pale, their wolves weakening. The wine, the blessed wine she'd forced them all to drink. "What have you done?" she gasped. "What you never expected," a voice boomed from the back of the hall. "We fought back." King Aldrich strode through the parting crowd, silver chains hanging broken from his wrists. He was thin from weeks of poisoning, scarred from torture, but his blue eyes blazed with wolf fire and righteous fury. Behind him came Beta Garrett and the loyal guards. From the servant entrances poured Omegas, dozens of them, no longer invisible, no longer silent. From the crowd itself, lower-ranking wolves stepped forward, choosing sides, choosing hope over hierarchy. Morgana backed toward the throne, her own wolf weakening from the poisoned wine. "This is treason. All of you, you'll be executed for—" "For what?" Aldrich's voice was soft but deadly. "For believing that pack means family, not domination? For standing with Omegas who showed more courage in 2 weeks than most alphas show in a lifetime?" He moved closer, and his alpha presence, no longer suppressed, no longer hidden, filled the hall. "You're right about one thing, Morgana. There will be executions today, but not for those who chose compassion." "You can't do this," Morgana snarled, but her voice wavered. "The pack won't accept an Omega Luna. They won't—" "The pack already has." Elena stepped forward from the Omega ranks, her voice carrying despite her age. "You want to know what we did during your reign, False Queen? We talked. We organized. We reached out to every corner of this territory, to the Omegas you tried to redistribute, to the elders you tried to silence, to the young wolves you tried to mold into monsters. And we asked them one question. Do you want a pack built on fear, or one built on the strength your king showed when he gave everything to discover the truth?" From throughout the hall, voices rose. Not all. Some still clung to the old ways, to the comfort of hierarchy. But enough. More than enough. "The vote was taken in secret," Elena continued. "Passed through whispers and hand signals and the invisible networks you never noticed. By Omega law, the oldest law, the one that predates your precious hierarchy, a Luna can be chosen by pack consensus. And this pack has chosen." Lyra felt tears streaming down her face as, one by one, wolves began to kneel. Not in submission, in recognition, in acceptance, in hope. Aldrich reached her, his hands gentle as he broke her chains like they were paper. The collar fell away, and for the first time in weeks, Lyra felt her wolf surge free, golden-eyed, fierce, no longer silent. In the spirit realm, the two wolves finally came together. Blue and gold, king and Omega, two halves of one soul. "I promised you a choice," Aldrich whispered, loud enough for all to hear. "I still mean it. Walk away now, and I'll build you a new life far from this chaos. Or stand with me and help me build a pack worth believing in." Lyra looked at him, really looked, and saw not a king, but a partner. Not power, but purpose. Not domination, but devotion. She turned to face the hall, her voice steady and strong. "I am Lyra Ashwood. I was invisible. I was forgotten. I was nothing." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But I choose to be more. I choose to stand for every Omega who was told they didn't matter. For every wolf who was ranked and filed and forgotten. I choose to be your Luna, not because I'm strong enough, but because we are. Together." The hall erupted in howls, some of rage, some of joy, all of them genuine. The old order was dying. A new one was being born in blood and hope, and the courage of invisible wolves finally seen. Morgana made one last desperate lunge for the throne, but Garrett was there, blocking her path. "It's over, my lady. Accept exile, or face pack justice for attempted murder of your king." Morgana looked around at the crumbling support, at the nobles who were backing away, at the warriors who refused to meet her eyes. Defeat settled over her features. "This pack will fall," she spat. "You can't change centuries of tradition. You can't make weakness into strength." "You're wrong," Lyra said quietly, stepping forward to stand beside Aldrich. "Compassion isn't weakness. It's the hardest strength there is. And we're going to prove it." 3 months later, the Shadow Moon Pack looked different now. Oh, the stones were the same, the territory unchanged, but the invisible barriers that had divided Omega from Alpha, servant from noble, visible from forgotten, those were crumbling. It wasn't easy. Change never was. There were still wolves who clung to the old ways, who grumbled about Omegas at the council table, who questioned whether their king had gone mad. But there were also new voices at those tables. Omega advisors who understood the needs of the most vulnerable. Lower-ranking wolves who'd proven their worth not through dominance, but through dedication. A pack learning to measure strength not by who you could defeat, but by who you chose to protect. Lyra stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, her chambers now, still strange to think, watching the sun set over her territory. Their territory. Aldrich's arms wrapped around her from behind, his warmth seeping into her bones. "Regrets," he murmured against her ear. "About which part? The revolution? The near-death experiences, or accidentally becoming queen of a pack that half hates me?" She felt his smile against her neck. "All of it." Lyra turned in his arms, studying the face she'd first seen hidden beneath a beggar's hood, the blue eyes that had looked at her and seen not an Omega, but a person. The hands that had trembled when they placed a crown on her head, not with the weight of gold, but with the weight of trust. "Not a single one," she whispered. "You? Only that I didn't see you sooner, that I let you starve in my own territory while I sat blind on my throne. You see me now." "I do." His hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness. "I see my mate, my Luna, my equal, the wolf who saved her king with a bowl of bread and changed everything." In the spirit realm, their wolves ran together, blue and gold, chasing through forests of starlight, no longer alone. "The council wants to discuss the new Omega protection laws tomorrow," Lyra said, reality intruding. "And Elena thinks we should establish formal education for all ranks, not just nobility. And there's a dispute in the Western Territory about food distribution that—" Aldrich silenced her with a kiss, deep and claiming and tender all at once. When he pulled back, his eyes were dancing. Tonight I just want to be here with you. No kings, no queens, just two wolves who found each other in the darkness." Lyra smiled, fierce and free. "We were never just two wolves. We're a revolution." "Yes," Aldrich agreed, pulling her close. "We are." Below them, the pack settled in for the night. And for the first time in 7 years, maybe longer, the territory was truly at peace. Not the peace of enforced silence and invisible suffering, but the real peace that comes when every voice is heard, every wolf is valued, every soul is seen. The beggar king had become a true king. The invisible Omega had become an unforgettable queen, and the pack that had been built on hierarchy learned slowly but surely that the strongest foundation was love. The end 1 year later. The Great Hall was full again, but this time there was laughter. The first anniversary of the Omega Revolution, as it had come to be known, was being celebrated not with somber ceremony, but with genuine joy. Omegas sat beside alphas at the feast tables. Young wolves played without regard to rank. Elders told stories of the old ways before hierarchy had poisoned pack bonds. And at the head table, King Aldrich and Queen Lyra sat hand in hand. Their mate bond visible to all with wolf sight, a shimmering thread of blue and gold that had grown so strong it lit up the spirit realm like a beacon. Elena approached the throne, moving more slowly now but with pride in every step. "My king, my Luna, the Omega Council has a gift." She placed a simple clay bowl on the table before them. Inside, bread, cheese, a sliver of dried meat. Lyra's breath caught, tears springing to her eyes. "We had it commissioned," Elena explained. "A reminder of where we started, of the moment everything changed. It will be placed in the Great Hall beneath a plaque that reads, 'Pack means no one gets left behind. This is what saved a kingdom.'" Aldrich lifted the bowl, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Not just a kingdom," he corrected gently. "It saved a king who'd forgotten how to see, how to lead, how to love." He turned to Lyra, and in his eyes she saw everything they'd fought for, everything they'd built, everything they'd become. "To invisible wolves finally seen," he toasted, raising the bowl. "To beggar kings finally humbled," Lyra added. "To pack," they said together. And the hall erupted in howls of agreement. 1,000 voices, all ranks, all wolves, all family. In the shadows of the spirit realm, 2 wolves ran free, blue and gold, king and Omega, forever intertwined. The test had been passed, the pack had been saved, and love, the most revolutionary force of all, had won.